When something is just a little too good to be true, we often wonder to ourselves, what's the catch? There's no such thing as a free lunch after all. But thanks to Jacinda Ardern and the government's free fee scheme, you could go to university for a year completely covered by the taxpayer. How generous of you, Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer. Well, maybe generous is the wrong word because you didn't exactly have a choice. But hey, that's how socialism works. I'm joking. Kind of. But anyways, after costing the taxpayer over $2 billion and achieving almost none of its intended targets, the coalition government are finally scrapping the scheme. So, no more free scuba diving training, no more DJing experiences, and no more yoga courses. Yes, those were all educations that were being utilized by the first year free scheme. Now, I'm sure there's an argument to be made that scuba divers are much needed in New Zealand, but I'm not so convinced about yoga or DJing. Those aren't exactly on our skills shortage list. It was, of course, briefly shifted to a final year free scheme because at least that had some ring of common sense to it. The simple reality is that 1 in 3 students who enroll in a bachelor degree don't actually go on to complete that degree. Now, this number might be slightly affected by those who start on one degree and then shift and then complete a different one instead, but the point still stands. A huge number of students who were given up to $12,000 a year worth of study by the taxpayer didn't go on to complete that degree. And I know for myself, when I did my law degree, the lecture halls were packed in the first year and then the numbers just dwindled down. And by the final year, we're in small little classrooms. It's just how it works. And then of course, those that go on to actually finish their degrees, it's only just over half of them that manage to get a job within 12 months of graduation. And then those that get a job in the field they studied, well, that can vary widely. So did the scheme achieve what it set out to achieve? Do we need to rethink the entire university model? And what do Chloe from the Greens and her woke friends at these universities think about having something that was given to them for free robbed away from them? Well, like any good socialists, they are very upset. So, important conversations to cover. Let's dig into it. So Jacinda Ardern's Labour had a stated goal with this policy to help more people get to university who were the first in their family to do so. That just simply didn't happen. In fact, a large majority of this free study went to students from more well-off families. It was also meant to increase the overall number of students at university. That also didn't happen. In fact, the rates of those studying at university in New Zealand have been decreasing recently. Stats NZ followed more than 250,000 school leavers from 2015 to 2019, and it found little to no evidence that free fees widened tertiary access. The study said, "We found no clear evidence that the policy encouraged students to enroll in bachelor degrees rather than certificates or diploma level study, or that it improved retention or completion." That's from AUT's Policy Research Institute Director. So what did it achieve? Well, it has meant less debt for students and for a large number of students. And I get it. I'm in my 5th year of paying off my law degree, and I did get admitted to the bar, and I did work as a prosecutor for 3 years. There's still plenty of debt to be paid off, and I'd love to have it paid off sooner, and I'd love to get more of the money that I earn every week. But that was what I signed up for when I decided to study, and I had to weigh up that decision as part of my decision-making process. Now, Gen Z are often harshly labelled as entitled and lazy, which I think, as I say, is very harsh to many Gen Z, but it is the case, unfortunately, as with every generation, that some do fit into that category. And being a socialist definitely doesn't help. So let's hear from Chloe and some of the young students that she's talking to, and just how gutted they are for being robbed of that free lunch that they were promised. Now, keep in mind, if you go and get a bachelor degree, you are likely to earn 35 to 50% more money than those that only finish school. And it does drop down to 22% more money than those that have trade qualifications. And that amounts to $1.4 million over the course of your working life. That's still over 14 times the amount that they would have had to borrow, even for the more debt-heavy degrees. And this includes all the money that they borrow just to live while they were studying. So let's keep that in mind, all the extra money that they earn from their degrees over their life, as we hear from these university students.
Hey students, the government is cutting fees free. They promised you'd get your last year of uni free, but now you won't.
Notice how it says the government is robbing students? Only a socialist would complain about something being robbed from them that was given to them for free in the first place.
You should be angry. You were entitled to a free year, and now it is going to put you into $12,000 more debt.
Entitled. You were entitled to a free year.
There are 2 things that you can do right now.
Also, it's up to $12,000. Most degrees are nowhere near that amount of money per year.
1. Sign the petitions pinned in the comments.
And 2, enroll to vote. It only takes 2 minutes at vote.nz. And I've got a step-by-step tutorial pinned in my Instagram reels.
This government does not care about young people.
But
That's a very big claim. That's a deep moral accusation that she just made there.
you can vote for a government that does.
So sign the petition to help change the government's mind who doesn't care about you at all, but really just vote in the Greens so they can bring in a socialist utopia and everything will be free all the time, paid for by who knows how, but don't need to worry about the details. All right, on to the next one.
What difference would fees free have made for you guys?
It would have made a huge difference. There's $12,000 more that I'm now no longer getting.
We hear all
$12,000 worth of value that he's now having to pay for.
these adults making arguments that, oh, you just get a job after university and you can pay off your loans, but have any of them actually tried getting a job recently? It's ridiculous to expect that we can just immediately find employment and pay off our loans, especially if there's an extra 12k on it.
Well, it does take a little bit longer to pay off a loan that's got an extra 12,000k on it. However, it's also part of the decision-making process to think, am I studying something that my country needs? Am I studying something that I'm going to be able to get a job in? Yes, there's always uncertainty, and yes, the economy is difficult, but we can't just waltz into university, study whatever tickles our fancy, and then complain when we can't find a job.
Coming from low socioeconomic background, going to university wasn't always a thing for me that I ever thought would happen. But because of that scheme, it really helped me to get into tertiary education.
What would you
So this is anecdotal data. They found someone who says that they changed their mind or their life was different because they agreed to go study, even though it was always going to be an interest-free loan, but now the interest-free loan is going to be smaller, and that was what pushed them over the edge to go study. But the reality is the statistics just don't bear this out. So he may have thought this is playing a huge part of my decision-making process. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but overall, the data just doesn't support it.
What would you guys be doing if you weren't here at university?
Yeah, I'd probably be living with my parents working in a supermarket, and that's not really a future that I want for myself.
Which is fair enough, but again, it depends on what you study as to whether you're going to have to end up working at a supermarket anyway.
I want to live in a world where access to university is only for people who come from wealth.
Again, this is just pulling on the emotions because it sounds like they're taking huge amounts of money away from disadvantaged people and now study is only accessible by the elite. The data does not bear this out. The reality is anyone can go and study, get an interest-free loan, pay off that loan when they get a job. It's just how it works. It has not increased any free scheme, whether it's at the start of their studies or briefly while it was at the end. It did not increase people from lower decile schools or lower income families actually accessing tertiary education. It just simply hasn't happened.
Because it shouldn't matter who you're born to, who you are, or the wealth that you've inherited. Everyone should have the opportunity to go to university if they want to.
Absolutely, and they do.
And fees free was a means of achieving that.
No, it wasn't at all.
And now it just means there's going to be another $10,000 of debt if this is scrapped.
Interest-free loan that gets paid off once you're working.
Making it harder for the next generation of our doctors, of our nurses, of our lawyers, of our educators. The next generation will have $10,000 of debt and likely more in the future.
The part of this conversation that I think does not get brought up enough and is absolutely the elephant in the room, universities just are absolutely scamming young people. These degrees that cost tens of thousands of dollars, you are not getting tens of thousands of dollars worth of benefits. Not at all. Not for the large majority of degrees anyway. These are unnecessarily extravagant campuses. They're constantly building flash new buildings, places for students to pretend to study and enjoy all their exclusive clubs. While others, they live on site paying huge money to do so, then there's a significant number of them that get entrenched into hookup culture and they start binge drinking within the first weeks of them arriving, often using their $1,000 of course-related costs on alcohol. People can get annoyed at me for saying this, but it's just simply what happens. It's the truth of the situation. So what I'm saying is, let's not pretend that in this modern world of the internet and of artificial intelligence, the universities should function in the same way that they've always functioned. It should not cost you 3 to 4 years of your life and tens of thousands of dollars to earn a piece of paper, which gives you just slightly over 50% chance of getting a job within the first year of graduation. That's just simply delusional. I'm not saying everyone who goes to university gets scammed, but many do. And many people go and spend their first years as adults paying huge amounts of money to study something of no real benefit to them or their society. Or worse, they spend that time getting indoctrinated by their woke professors who have never had a job out in the real world. And while they're doing this, they're getting into huge amounts of debt, many of them making personal decisions that they're going to regret for the rest of their life. And I know this sounds like a rather bleak outlook on university, but I'm saying this as someone who's had a very positive university experience. It worked out well for me. Despite their attempts, I wasn't indoctrinated. I completed my law degree. I worked for a few years in the exact area of law that I wanted to work in. But I have no doubt at all what I learned could have been done in a fraction of the time for a fraction of the cost. Imagine how much more so for degrees in things like women's studies, who no doubt leave completely baffled as to what a woman actually is and just a huge amount of blue hair dye on Afterpay. And on top of that, society needs to rethink the entire modern university system. There are people who have their degrees today who did their exams at home because of COVID, and the majority of students use AI today for the majority of their assignments. So what are they actually paying for? A flash new campus or their woke professor teaching them anti-Western ideas so that the majority of young women who leave university leave with the woke mind virus, and many of our young men leave significantly more feminine than when they signed up. Neither of which are helping our plummeting birth rates, by the way, but that's a topic for another day. So has the government made the right call? Well, the scheme has achieved none of its goals other than reducing student debt, but that's what happens when the government pays for something for you, taking money from one person and giving it to someone else. That's just how taxes work. And so $2 billion, is it worth it? Well, I would argue no, and most people are saying we should scrap this, except for, of course, socialists and some students who understandably want less debt when they finish their degree. I know for myself, I'd rather have $12,000 less student loan, but I'm not entitled enough to think that the taxpayer owes me enough to pay that for me. And so here we are. Adults living with the consequences of our own decisions, personal responsibility. It's a life lesson more important than anything you can learn in university. And unfortunately, it's incredibly unlikely that you will learn such responsibility in today's modern universities, which are just rife with socialism, critical theory, and identity politics. And so you have to wonder, if the system is not producing what it's supposed to and far from it, perhaps it's time to rethink the entire system.